All right, week 15, we'll not have Keenan Allen. We'll talk about that, and we'll get you ready for Thursday night's game once again with the updated start-sit advice. And, special guest, 10 seconds into the show, Dave is on. I did not know Dave was coming. Hello, Dave Richard.
Just finished my radio spot in Boston where they promote our YouTube live stream, by the way. Cool. And they always say to me at the end of the show, how come you're here with us instead of on the live stream? And I tell them, I'll be on the live stream. Don't worry. And today I told the truth. I'm on the live stream and I'm here. Let's talk week 15.
Let's do it. And good morning, Jamie.
Good morning.
Hey, Jamie.
All right. Dave, you have a little bit of time to think about your player that you love and player to avoid for week 15. And after we do that, we'll go through the news and notes and talk about the Chargers pass catchers without Keenan Allen in this matchup tonight against the Raiders. Today's episode is presented by Salesforce. The 8 games we're talking about today, the AFC home games: Dallas at Buffalo. All right. Minnesota at Cincinnati, Kansas City at New England, Jets at Dolphins, Bears at Browns, Houston at Tennessee, Pittsburgh at Indianapolis. Boy, once you get past that Dallas-Buffalo game, it seems like a lot of low-scoring games. Anyway, Jamie Eisenberg, who's the player that you love this week?
Our start of the week, it's Matthew Stafford, top 5 quarterback for this week. He's obviously been playing great, and I have sort of pooped on him for the last couple of weeks, not expecting him to play well in some of those tough matchups, and he's come through with just absolute stellar performances. Over 28 fantasy points each of his last 3 games against Arizona, Cleveland, and Baltimore. And the latter 2, I didn't think he would play as well as he has. He's been fantastic. And now he gets the layup of all matchups, which is the layup start of the week, hopefully, as he takes on the Washington Commanders, who are number 31 in fantasy points allowed to opposing quarterbacks. And the last 4 quarterbacks against them have scored at least 23 fantasy points. 11 quarterbacks on the season have gotten to at least 20 fantasy points. So hopefully that's the floor, and he can get you that, and you'll be happy about it. But he could be just an absolute stud once again. His receiving core is seemingly healthy. It doesn't seem like Cooper Kupp is at 100%, but playing as close to 100% as he possibly will be. But, I mean, look, they're finding different guys. Davis Allen last week stepping up with a strong game. It just feels like everything is falling in line for the Rams to make a potential playoff run here. And it's been fun to watch Sean McVay sort of concoct this offense and Matthew Stafford have a little bit of a renaissance here at the second half of the season.
Yeah, and there are 4 quarterbacks that both of you guys have ahead of Stafford. They are, in some order, Hurts, Allen, Dak Prescott, and Lamar Jackson. You both have Stafford and Brock Purdy back-to-back. Right now, Jamie has Stafford 5, Purdy 6, and Dave has Purdy 5 and Stafford 6. So it's good company for Matthew Stafford this week. Dave Richard, who do you...
3.
What'd you say?
Sportsline has him 3rd.
Sportsline has him 3rd. All right. Heath has him 10th as of now, but I'll try not to bring up Heath's rankings because I know sometimes he changes them. Sometimes they're just his projections, and then he'll make changes. And I want to let him, I'd let him defend himself.
I'll do my Heath impression. Yeah, the projections have him just a few points behind. So when I make my rankings adjustment, he'll be probably 6 or 7.
That doesn't sound like Heath at all.
Go ahead, Dave.
Adam, you know how Heath sounds.
Yes.
And
sorry, you were queuing me up there, huh?
I was trying.
All right, Dave, who do you love this week?
When you think of stud fantasy football running backs, you think of 28-plus-year-old guys that are on their last legs on losing teams. You think of Ezekiel Elliott. And, man, could I have been more wrong on him last week? I don't think it's possible. And this week I'm not going to fall into the trap again. He's got a good matchup against Kansas City. They've allowed at least 13 non-PPR points to a running back in 6 of their past 7 games. We used to look at the Chiefs and say, oh, they're just going to blow teams out of the water. They're going to put up a ton of points. It's going to force their opponent to throw and not be able to run the ball. I don't know if this Chiefs offense can do that anymore. And I think this Patriots defense is actually playing well across the board. Maybe they could be a little bit better at their pass rush, but I think you could see New England maybe force Kansas City to keep the score at a relative pace where Ezekiel Elliott isn't taken out of the game plan. I think he's going to get a lot of work. I think he's going to catch a lot of passes. I think he could be a top 15, if not top 12 running back for the 2nd week in a row.
All right. And I know Heath has him 4th or something like that. So Jamie and Dave have Zeke 12th. Heath has him 4th. Sportsline has Ezekiel Elliott at 17th. And tonight you got Austin Eckler. Probably not Josh Jacobs. Zeke or Eckler?
Zeke.
I've got Eckler.
All right. So those are the players that we love. Now we'll focus on the players that we are trying to avoid. Jamie, who's a player we're avoiding?
It's tough after the way he played last week, but Drake London home versus Drake London road is just dramatically different. It's crazy. So at least 14.1 PPR points, 5 of his 6 road home games this season. On the road, 6 road games, he's averaging just 7.9 PPR points per game. And in his last 2 on the road prior to this week's game that he's playing at Carolina, 6.6 PPR points at Arizona, 1.8 PPR points at the Jets. So he just does not have the same magic in away from Atlanta. So I think you just look at it and say, okay, is he definitely a sit? No, because he's capable of playing at a high level as we've seen. But you look at home road splits, and his worst home game, ironically enough, was against Carolina when he had 1 target, no catches. So this defense has just done really good job against opposing passing games. A lot of it is because teams run on them, and I think that's what we'll see from Arthur Smith. If you need a sleeper this week, Tyler Algier, not bad. But in terms of just Drake London, only a starter in 3 receiver leagues for me, and certainly much better in PPR than none.
Do you think it's really a home road thing, or do you think it's a game script thing? Where
I think it's a home road thing because Desmond Ridder also plays much better at home.
I think it's more of a game script thing. There just hasn't been that many games this year where the Falcons have been able to put it on cruise control because the opponent that they play can't put points on the board. Literally, the only 2 games where that's happened are Carolina in week 1 and the Jets game. You referenced both of those games, and they were both games where Drake London did bupkis because Ritter didn't throw that much, and they didn't have to throw in that game. They needed to throw last week, and we knew that going in. So I like that call a lot. I think Drake London's going to have a lean game. I would be very nervous to start him.
How about you, Dave? Who's the player to avoid?
Christian McCaffrey is a good football player, so I'm not going to say him. Let's go with Tua. That offensive line is really beat up for the Dolphins. I think that you're going to see them struggle to protect Tua anytime he holds the ball for more than 2 seconds. He doesn't do that a lot. He does get the ball out pretty quickly. They'll try and adjust with that, but this is a tough defense with the Jets. We saw it earlier this year when Tua played against them, had a terrible fantasy game, even though Tyreek had huge numbers. Now Tyreek isn't at 100%. We've talked about what we've seen on film with him. I've got Tua outside of my top 12. It feels a little uncomfortable because we know what his upside is and what he's capable of, but the Jets have done such a good job this year of embarrassing quarterbacks week after week after week. It's hard to find quarterbacks that have put up good games against the New York Jets. I think this is going to be another tough game for Tua. I would be very hesitant to start him. Easy to start Matthew Stafford ahead of him. That's a piece of cake. But I'll also start Russell Wilson ahead of him. I'll start Jared Goff ahead of him. I'll start Sam Howell ahead of him. And this is the piece to resist us. This is the one that might make me look silly. I'll start Joe Flacco over Tua Tagovailoa this week, unless we hear word that the offensive line gets a little bit better and that Tyreek Hill has a full practice and that there's nothing wrong with him. Then I'll move Tua back up. But until then, he's behind all those guys.
Tyreek said on a Twitch stream that I believe he does every week that he's fine and he's playing.
Okay. Well, I'm glad he's playing, but is he the same guy? And even if he plays, we saw it earlier this year. I think he had like 9 catches for 120 yards and a touchdown against the Jets. And Tua still had a bad game.
Yeah, and Waddle had a big game too.
Waddle, had one of his best games. Tua threw some interceptions in that game.
Yeah, and one of them was kind of
ran. Usually what happens when Tua has a bad game, almost every time, one of his running backs has 90 or more yards and multiple touchdowns. So, that was the case last week. That was the case against the Jets. And that sort of feels like it could be the case again this week. But not just that. The Jets, I believe they give up the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. So
they are number 1, yes.
We talked a lot about this on yesterday's show. So I'm sure most of you who are listening today probably heard that. Also, you probably, if you listen to this show, you know who Ryan Wilson is. He's one of the hosts of the Pick 6 podcast, and he comes on our show during draft season all the time. You definitely know Rick Spielman. He's the guy that drafted the fantasy studs, Adrian Peterson, Dalvin Cook, and Justin Jefferson when he was the real-life GM with the Minnesota Vikings. And Ryan and Rick, they have an NFL draft podcast called With the First Pick. And I will tell you personally that I listened to this show all the time last year to get myself ready for the NFL draft. And it was so good and so helpful. I learned so much about all these players. They did a tremendous job. And not only that, they really have a great rapport. Very funny show. I think you're going to really like it. It's called With the First Pick. So it's mock drafts, prospect profiles. Football fans, you will love this. Dynasty fans, you will love this. Check out With the First Pick. We had a question of the day from the chat. It was from Jose. And he said, which of the FFT crew would you most want to be your neighbor?
Not you.
Why not me?
You're always sick.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't want spider crickets in my house.
Not Heath. Obviously, you can't trick or treat with him.
No, but he barbecues the most. So you're going to get to smell all that delicious food.
Will he invite you, though?
I'm just going to show up.
I would say it's Dave or Jamie. Now, Dave only has one kid in the house, so that's less noise. Jamie's got 3 little
Not these days. I got 2 now.
I got 2? All right. Oh, he's got
a
2 teenagers. That could be kind of noisy. House party. I'm going to say Jamie. Jamie, congratulations. I'd like to live next to you.
You think having 3 kids under the age of 13 is going to make for a quiet house?
But they're cute. You don't mind it. They're not like drinking and throwing beer bottles on your lawn. Like you're crazy, unruly kids, Dave.
Yeah, I know. My 16-year-old daughter is out of control.
Yeah. All right, let's go to our news and notes. CJ Stroud missed practice. He's still in the concussion protocol. They say he is improving. If he plays, we'll talk about this game, but where would you rank CJ Stroud?
In the Tua range, outside the top 12. But I have a really tough call in one super flex league where I lost Burrow, I lost Richardson. Stroud's been my guy the entire season. I've just been kind of mixing and matching the second quarterback. So now I have to start Joe Flacco and Gardner Minshew, or maybe Nick Mullins. It's just gross. So if Stroud plays like in that scenario, I'm definitely starting him. But in most one quarterback leagues, I would look to avoid him. I mean, Nico Collins missed practice also. No Tank Dell. He's been, again, bad on the road this season. This isn't one of those matchups I think that you fear, but not the most encouraging scenario. But you would rather see him out there. And for what it's worth, Dalton Schultz did practice in full, so he's good to go.
Stroud or Browning?
Oh, Stroud.
Okay. I can see that. Stroud or Sam Howell?
Howell's had a Tua.
Tua or Stroud?
Stroud.
All right, thank you. You guys have basically cut down on what I need to say when we talk about that game. All right, what else? Aiden O'Connell is expected to start. Antonio Pierce didn't commit to a quarterback, but it's supposedly going to be Aiden O'Connell tonight. Will Levis has an ankle injury. He should be fine, and Trevor Lawrence practiced in full. At running back, Josh Jacobs is questionable. At the moment, we are not expecting him. We'll have a live stream tonight before the game, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. Devon Achane missed practice with a toe injury. So this guy just keeps getting these little dings. Hopefully he's fine. Wednesday practice reports are pretty unreliable. A.J. Dillon missed practice with a thumb injury. Aaron Jones was limited. Brian Robinson did not practice. That's a pretty big deal coming off their bye.
Same with Marquise Brown.
Yep, I'll get to that. Jonathan Taylor, again, did not practice. Alexander Madison did not practice, and they have a Saturday game, so it's looking like Ty Chandler right now. Isaiah Pacheco missed practice, and Jerome Ford was limited. Kareem Hunt missed practice. He typically, I think, misses practice on Wednesdays, but Jerome Ford was limited, which was a good sign for him. At wide receiver, Devontae Adams is questionable tonight with an illness. Usually guys with illnesses, they play. Keenan Allen out with a heel injury, Jamie. So what does this mean now for the Chargers?
Well, I mean, if there was ever an offense to target, first off, make sure the Rams DST is not available in your league. They are top 3 this week, looking at the situation that they're dealing with Easton Stick and no Keenan Allen. I mean, it could be a great performance by that DST. So
the Raiders DST?
Yeah.
Okay. You said Rams. So
I'm sorry. Raiders. Excuse me.
For next week or something.
Yes.
Okay. So Raiders. All right.
I apologize. Yes, the Raiders DST. Great situation. I just got Rams on the mind. So I don't want to trust any of them. You got Josh Palmer coming off the IR, 6-game absence with a knee injury. You have Quentin Johnston with a backup quarterback. Gerald Everett's battling through an injury. It's really Austin Eckler's the only one I would trust, and I dropped him from a number 1 running back to a mid-tier number 2 guy because it's just going to be try and shut him down as best you can. So not a slam dunk like it was prior to this when at least Keenan Allen was healthy, take some pressure off it. So I don't like this Chargers scenario at all.
No.
Okay,
I moved the Raiders DST up this morning. They're definitely startable. How about this? The Chargers have allowed at least 12 fantasy points to a DST in each of their past 3 games. And that was with Justin Herbert playing in those games. Now it's Easton Stick without Keenan Allen.
Okay, I just thought maybe without Keenan Allen, we could be looking at like a 8 to 10 catch game for Austin Eckler or something.
You could. You certainly could.
Look, Didn't Stick throw like 20% of his targets to Eckler?
Yeah.
And
he's not a sit. He's not a sit by any stretch. But it's just, what's the touchdown potential?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, back to the notes here. Tyreek Hill missed practice, but Jamie already said that Tyreek Hill says he's going to play. Jamar Chase versus Justin Jefferson this week. Both of them are injured, but both of them say they will play. Marquise Brown missed practice. Michael Wilson did practice, though, for the Cardinals. DJ Moore missed practice with an ankle injury. I assume he's fine. Nico Collins did not practice. Devontae Parker and Demario Douglas were limited. Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, and Dontavian Wicks missed practice. Remember, they played on Monday. They get Tampa Bay this week. Rashid Shaheed practiced, but Chris Olave was out with an ankle injury. So, again, not going to panic there, but nice that Shaheed is trending in the right direction. And Deontay Johnson missed practice with a knee injury. They're playing Saturday. We'll see. I would assume he'll play. Deontay. Dalton Schultz, as Jamie mentioned, is practicing in full and looks like he will be back. Taysom Hill back on the practice field. That's great news. Darren Waller is hoping to play this week, so that would be Taysom Hill versus Darren Waller in a tight end battle for the ages. Dalton Kincaid was limited. Tyler Higbee was limited. He might be back this week. Greg Dulcich eligible to come off IR. Offensive line injuries you have to keep an eye on. Dave talked about this one. The Dolphins' offensive line is a disaster right now. I mean, probably as injured as any line in football.
Do you know that every single starter from week 1 is either on IR or on their current injury report, along with a backup from week 1? They're all on the injury report.
Kansas City left tackle Donovan Smith missed practice with a neck injury. He could miss another game. I'll just say this now because we're going to talk about the Patriots game. I mean, I can't find a reason. If I had no idea who he was, and this was my first year watching football, I can't find a reason to start Patrick Mahomes this week. Other than the fact that he's Patrick Mahomes, I will start him. I assume. The one thing I have him in, I have a bye, but just saying, like, no left tackle, not playing well. Patriots on the road. Anyway, we'll get to
I
that.
have him
left tackle.
Played one league, and thankfully I have a bye because I want to see how he performs this week again. Not that I'm going to bench him, but I want to see something.
Right. Well, I mean, there's even more. It's like he faced the Bills, who were giving up 22 or more points to something like 4 of the last 5 or 5 of the last 6, and he struggled against them. He faced the Eagles, and he struggled against them. And some of it's been bad luck with, non-calls and dropped touchdowns and this and that. But
he missed Rice on a touchdown last week. That would have changed some things.
Yeah, there's been a lot of bad luck for him. Okay.
You're looking for 2 touchdowns. I think he's got a shot at getting 2 touchdowns. I think 300-plus yards is something that's kind of out of the question. And I said that the left tackle replacement did a good job last week. It was serviceable at best. I'm looking at PFF right now. They've got 3 starting linemen, including both tackles, giving up at least 5 pressures each against Buffalo last week.
Right.
Now, Buffalo's got one of the best pass rushes around.
Right tackle is a mess for them.
Jawan Taylor, yeah.
Good news on the O-line, though. Detroit left tackle Taylor Decker and center Frank Ragnow were limited in practice as they get ready for the Broncos, who have a lot of injuries on defense. Speaking of which, some defensive notes. The teams that are, I won't go through everything, but the teams that are really beat up right now, the first practice report, are San Francisco at Arizona, Houston at Tennessee, Tampa Bay at Green Bay, and Cleveland. Cleveland against Chicago.
Yep.
And Grant Delpit, their starting safety, he's on IR. Denzel Ward's still not back at practice. This may not be that tough of a matchup for
Justin. Just lost their second leading pass rusher in terms of sacks, I believe.
That's right. That's right.
I'm not going to pronounce his name, but Obo.
Yep. They lost him for the season. So, and Denver's a little beat up too. Denver lost an edge rusher. So this is big for Detroit, and we'll talk about this game tomorrow. But Denver, Ogbo Okoronkwo for Denver's out for the season, or could be out for the season. Nick Benito, the linebacker, and safety PJ Locke, they both missed practice. The Bills are also pretty beat up against Dallas. All right, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we got one question for each game, and then we will start really breaking it down. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
Sunday, the race to the playoffs is on, with the Bucs heading to Lambeau to face the Packers, and key matchups featuring the Dolphins and 49ers. We can't wait. The NFL is on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
Okay. Dallas is at Buffalo. Here we go. Which running back do you prefer, Dave Richard?
Well, I think when you look at this game, you look at James Cook. He's been pretty good, and Tony Pollard's been better lately. I think I'll lean Cook, but it's really close. They're both RB2s.
Okay. Jamie, Pollard or Cook?
I lean with Pollard, but it's very close. I like the fact that Pollard had 7 catches last week. I think that's huge. If he's that involved in the passing game, that's going to be very important. Look, Dallas's run defense has been amazing, and James Cook has been amazing since Joe Brady's taken over. So we'll find out which of those two things win out. But the fact that he's gotten 3 straight games of 15 plus touches is important, and really the work in the passing game for him as well. So I think they're very close, but I'll give a slight edge to Pollard.
Okay. A running back has caught at least 3 passes in all but 1 game against the Bills. So I'm looking for that for Pollard, who's been very involved in the passing game for about 5 or 6 weeks now in a row, something like that. Minnesota's at Cincinnati. Are you feeling Joe Mixon this week? He had the big week 2 games ago. I don't think everybody was really bought in. Now it's 2 in a row. Are you feeling Joe Mixon?
Yep. I think he's a good number 2 running back. It's clearly a very good defense, what the Vikings have done lately. In terms of shutting down running, but really the whole season, what they've done in shutting down running backs. His role in the passing game has been fantastic. A little too much Chase Brown for a Joe Mixon fantasy manager, especially that he's taking away some of those big plays, because you saw Mixon do, have a big screen play as well. So if he had gotten both those opportunities, maybe he has those 2 long runs. But I mean, look, it's a lot of work. It's involvement in the passing game. It's goal line opportunities. So you really have to have a loaded roster to sit Joe Mixon, but he's not a top 12 guy this week just based on matchup.
I've got him 13th. He has at least 21 PPR points in 3 of his last 4 games. 2 of them, each of his last 2 with Browning, at least 21.5 if you go with the decimals.
Only 4 running backs have scored more than 11 PPR fantasy points against the Vikings. So I hope you didn't say
No, it's tough, but I think Browning and just his style of passing helps Mixon. I think the offensive line's been playing a little bit better too.
His style of passing is in like barely beyond the line of scrimmage.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Yeah, it helps. All right, let's go to our next game.
Targets for Mixon and Chase Brown last week.
Dave, I'll give this one to you. You said you wanted to start Ezekiel Elliott. You love Zeke. Kansas City at New England. Would you start Ezekiel Elliott against the Chiefs, who, by the way, give up the 2nd most yards per carry to running backs, over Travis Etienne against Baltimore, Eckler at Las Vegas, and Breece Hall at Miami?
I'll start him over Etienne.
Okay, but Eckler and Hall, you're going to take over Zeke.
Yeah, they're close with Eckler and Elliott, but I'll take the lean with Eckler against Las Vegas. I think that's a better matchup for Eckler. And I've got Breece ahead of them all right now.
All right, let's go to our next game. It's the Jets at the Dolphins. Jamie, starter sit Jalen Waddle.
Definite starter in 3 receiver leagues, borderline starter in 2 receiver leagues. One of his best games, you mentioned this, was against the Jets. And so I don't think it's necessarily one you have to run away from just because the defense is so good. But clearly there's a little bit of a cap ceiling here, because the Jets secondary is still one of the best in football. And you get a banged up offensive line for Tua. How much time will he have to throw? How much time will he have to connect with Waddle? So he's outside the top 24 for me, but just outside. So not a slam dunk, but it's not because I think based on him, we have no teams on a bye. Really 2 significant injuries, I think, of guys you would rank ahead of him, at least I would most times, which would be Keenan Allen and Nico Collins at this point. So if those 2 guys both being out, Keenan Allen is, that's why Waddle's a little bit lower than he normally would be. But I wouldn't necessarily say he's a sit.
Okay. And you're saying he's just outside the top 24. Well, let me tell you that per game, he is just outside the top 24 this season. Jalen Waddle is the number 27 wide receiver per game in non-PPR and number 25 per game in full PPR. Chicago's at Cleveland. I talked about those Cleveland defensive injuries, Dave. Is Justin Fields a must-start quarterback?
Yes. His rushing floor is great. I think his passing gives him a shot to put up some good numbers as well. The safeties for Cleveland are a mess. We don't know about Denzel Ward and whether or not he'll play. And the best pass rushers from Cleveland are still going to play. Their top 3 will still be there, but their depth is really going to get tested quite a bit. And the Bears offensive line, this is another offensive line that started to play a little bit better as the season has rolled on a little bit. It's really because they've stayed healthier. And it all just kind of comes together for Fields, who should give us another top 10 week at quarterback.
Houston is at Tennessee. Has DeAndre Hopkins reached must-start status?
He's getting there. Touchdown 3 of his last 4, 24 targets in his last 2 games. Really connecting well with Will Levis right now by comparison to where it was, at least the first game after the Atlanta game when he had the 4 touchdowns. But even then, it was just really the big plays, the 3 touchdowns, excuse me. In terms of the matchup, it's second time in his career he's playing against Houston, which is the team he started his career with. And the first time he played them, he had 7 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown. That was with Arizona. So I think this matchup matters to him. I'm sure Mike Vrabel, knowing the type of coach he is, will do whatever he can to get Hopkins back in the end zone. And so top 20 wide receiver, not a top 10 or top 15 guy, but top 20 for sure.
All right. Waddle or Hopkins?
Hopkins.
Jamar Chase or Hopkins?
Chase.
Agreed.
Okay. Also in this game, just a stat, just in case for those of you who won't be here in an hour. Derrick Henry in his last 5 games against the Texans. It's a much, much different Texans run defense. Much different. But in his last 5 games, he has rushed for 211, 212, 250, 219, and a measly 126 yards with 3, 2, 2, 2, and 1 rushing touchdown in those games. So I'm looking forward to talking about Henry because it is a tough matchup. But gosh, you can't. Best history. He's got to have the best history. I feel like Josh Allen against the Dolphins, Derrick Henry against the Texans are the 2 that stand out to me. Best history by any player against one team.
He's a must-start fantasy running back.
I'm sure I'm missing some, but those are the ones that I can recall. Pittsburgh at the Colts. Can Zach Moss finally do something with the touches? Actually do. I shouldn't say finally because he did earlier in the year. But in this little round without Jonathan Taylor.
I mean, look, the 2 games without Jonathan Taylor have been bad, and you would have thought, okay, you're giving him based on the efficiency that he had when he was the guy earlier and even when he was still sharing with Jonathan Taylor that, 20 plus touches, he's going to be an absolute star. And he's been miserable. He's been absolutely miserable. But look, the last 2 running backs against the Steelers, it's been different ways. James Conner on the ground 2 games ago, 100 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. Ezekiel Elliott through the air last week. Moss has the ability to beat them both ways from what we've seen them from in this season. So I don't think, like for me at least, I was ranking him as a top 10 guy each of the last 2 games because of what the opportunity was and what he had shown. And clearly he has been a flop in that regard. So I'll be a little bit more cautious this week, and he's more of a top 20 guy. But still, feels like there's a breakout game coming, and hopefully it's this week.
You hope so, especially against the Steelers defense that's been kind of destroyed by running backs lately. He does look like he's lost a little bit of burst. At least last week he did. Maybe like too patient after getting the ball off the handoff. But he does have some good quickness once he does get going. Jamie, you mentioned it, the fact that he can catch the ball in the backfield. If the Colts are paying attention, they can attack the Steelers the exact same way that the Patriots did. And they can do that with Zach Moss. I have him as a top 20 running back as well.
Okay. All right, then. Let's dive right into it. Dallas at Buffalo. Random stat of the game. These 2 teams have combined to allow 1 catch of 30 or more air yards. They are best against the deep ball, basically. So I will ask this stupid pile of garbage one more time. You let me down last week. Should I start Gabe Davis? You better say no, dumbass 8-ball. Prospect good. All right. I have to talk with the 8-ball. We're not starting Gabe Davis, right? All right, so you know what? We can probably do this one fairly easily. We'll save the running backs for a little bit here. But passing game, Jamie, just sum up the Cowboys at the Bills.
There's 2 must-start guys at the wide receiver position. There are 2 must-start guys at the tight end position. And then just a lot of maybes. Like, I would not trust Brandon Cooks in this spot on the road. He just does not play well in that regard. Hasn't got enough targets, I think, to warrant starting him in this matchup. Obviously, Gabe Davis has been a disaster. 3 of his last 5 games without a catch. Khalil Shakir with both tight ends playing. No, thank you. And so, Michael Gallup, no way. So I think you start Lamb. He's the number 1 receiver this week. You start Diggs with the hope that the slump buster's coming at some point and, maybe facing his brother's team. His brothers talk a lot of trash. I know he's not playing, but still, that this is a game where he steps up and has a big performance. It's a really good Dallas defense, So I know they've beaten up on a lot of really bad offenses, and this is not one of them, but they're still going to make things tough on Josh Allen and that passing attack. So Diggs, Lamb, Ferguson, and Kincaid. And Kincaid gets a little bit of a downgrade from where he's been just because Knox is back and he's a little bit banged up. But you're still starting those guys.
So yeah, Kincaid did run the most routes, I think, of any Bill or something like that. It was up there. Jacob mentioned this on Beyond the Box Score, so that was encouraging. But he's slumping a little bit. So I mean, what do we got here? The last 3 games, 10.6, 8.8, and 7.1 fantasy points for Kincaid. So is he must start? I mean, is he still? Yeah, he used to be like top 5.
He's better than Goddard. He's better than Likely still for me. He's better than, anybody that you'd be looking to pick up off waivers. If Taysom Hill plays, I'll probably play Hill over him, so if there's just somebody coming back just based on his matchup against the Giants, because I think I'll run on them. So that's really it. Laporta obviously has superseded him. McBride has superseded him.
What about Kmet?
That's a
I
good
have him
one.
over Kmet.
I would probably go with Kmet over Kincaid. Right now I have Kincaid ranked higher, but the Delpit injury is big. So it's close. Maybe just take the shot on Kincaid in the shootout.
If the Cowboys are good at limiting the deep ball, then underneath plays should be there for Kincaid.
Diggs, if anybody has questions, he's not in the top 5 this week, but he's in the top like 14 for everyone. And I will say, I mean, look, obviously Dallas has a good defense, but they are not, to me, the last 3 games that Diggs has been horrible. 3 of the last 4 have been against Denver, the Jets, and the Chiefs. For a guy like Diggs, those to me are tougher matchups. They have better shutdown corners, than the Cowboys. And Gilmore, did Gilmore do a good job against A.J. Brown? Yeah. But did A.J. Brown also have 90 yards? Yeah. And you look at the Cowboys, they haven't shut down that many good wide receivers. Usually good wide receivers do fine against the Cowboys. So I'm hoping this is the turnaround for Diggs. I did mention some underlying issues.
Only one wide receiver scored against them in the last 4 games, right? It was DK Metcalf.
Yeah, he scored enough touchdowns for everyone, though.
Yeah,
but like Smith, but you throw a lot against actually you don't. That's the weird thing. You don't throw a lot against the Cowboys. You try to, but they blow out a lot of teams. But maybe touchdowns, yeah. But in terms of like Smith and Brown were both really good, right? They both had at least 12.3 PPR points. Curtis Samuel had 100 yards. Adam Thielen had 8 catches for 74 yards.
All short area type receivers predominantly.
And that's kind of what Diggs has been lately. I mean, it's just been a much more conservative Josh Allen. But all right.
He's been more conservative, and they've given more work to James Cook since the coordinator change.
And I don't know if you said this, but you like Ferguson better than Kincaid this week?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. How about Dak and Allen are easy, but how about the running backs now? So Paul, you guys were a little split on Pollard versus Cook. Pollard in the last 4 games is the number 3 running back in fantasy, but he's number 10 per game. Yeah, I don't know. Very involved in the passing game, as I mentioned. All right, these guys are starts. Cook maybe a little bit tougher call because his role is just kind of different. But Dave, what do you think about Cook?
I probably misspoke earlier, but I do like them both as like top 20 type of fantasy running backs. Cook's just gotten a lot more work since the coordinator change. We're talking about
game of the week.
Yes,
come back and play for
Thursday game of the week.
Come on,
about Michael Irvin and Drew Pearson. The other side is Andre Reed and Jim Kelly. I think they could all go and play. What I think about the matchup. I was waiting for you to do this earlier in the show.
Bring him on Thursday and get him on the Thursday.
I knew it was coming, and I knew it was this game. I wasn't sure if it was going to be when we talked about the game or when we did the one question for each game. And I was so thrown off on the one question for each game, I screwed up my analysis of the running backs.
I noticed a little hesitation there. Yes.
Yeah. I was getting ready to start dropping all the old school names like I just did while you played the music.
All right. You got to repeat what you said about James Cook. And the thing, recently, this Cowboys team has just been unbelievable against running backs. So, yeah, go ahead and repeat what you said about Cook.
Last 3 games, these are 3 games with Joe Brady calling plays. It's 19 touches per game for James Cook, 114.3 total yards per game, 20.1 PPR points per game. It's a huge jump compared to the first 10 weeks of the season where he was under 15 touches per game, under 12 PPR points per game. It's a tough matchup, but I think Buffalo's still going to commit to James Cook in the matchup and still give him opportunities both on the ground. And it would make so much sense to use him through the air to try and negate the Cowboys pass rush a little bit more, hit those underneath throws like we talked about. I think that benefits Kincaid. I think that benefits Cook. But no, it's not enough to start Cook over Pollard. I will start Pollard, but it's very close.
All right. Would you start Achane or James Cook?
Cook.
If Achane is okay, I think I'd probably lean into his upside over Cook, but it's really tough, and I just want to see if Achane can practice first.
Devontae Adams or James Cook?
That's Cook.
All right. I mean, the Cowboys have been sort of like running back slayers, but let's go. Come on, James Cook. All right. Who wins?
Buffalo.
Yep.
And you want to try to avoid the Cowboys DST? If
Yes.
possible?
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry. Who do they have next week? I'm just wondering, should we stash them or should we?
Buffalo?
No, the Cowboys.
Dallas?
Miami.
No.
Yep. At Miami. Drop
Dallas has Miami. Buffalo has the Chargers. You can stash the Buffalo DST.
And give me a pick. Give me a pick. Give me a pick. Cowboys at Bills.
We just did.
You picked the game?
Yeah,
You
we
just
said
asked us who
Buffalo.
wins, and we both said
I asked you that. What'd you say?
Is this a bit?
I have no recollection of this. None. This is cold medicine kicking in. Who'd you pick?
We're not telling you. You've got to
Okay.
go back and listen.
I think I like the Cowboys. Minnesota's at
Dallas
Cincinnati.
Bills, baby.
Wow. I remember when they played in the Super Bowl once upon a time.
Or twice.
Minnesota at Cincinnati. Your updated stat of the game. The longest rush by a running back other than DeAndre Swift against the Vikings is 15 yards. I have no recollection of that at all.
Are you sure you're okay?
No, I'm not okay.
We can handle this if you want to go, take a nap or go to the emergency room. Do you know your name?
Did I do game of the weekend? I wonder. Did I do that or should we do that again? All right. Minnesota at Cincinnati. Anyway, running backs are horrible against Minnesota. You already talked about Joe Mixon. Did I ask you to rank Joe Mixon with Pollard and Cook?
That I don't believe you did.
He's behind them for me.
He's ahead of them for me.
Yeah. Okay. What game are we on? Let's talk about Ty Chandler. Good matchup. How we feeling about there was a running back that we were a little hesitant on earlier. Oh, Zach Moss. Ty Chandler or Zach Moss?
Moss, but it's close.
Yeah. All right. Jamie, expectations for Ty Chandler, assuming Madison's out?
I mean, again, you saw a game last week where it was a low-scoring affair, and it was 12 carries and 3 catches in a game that Madison started and was on his way to a big game, 9 carries for 66 yards before he got hurt. So I think he's looking at 20-plus touches, and it's an offense that has clearly not been great for its running backs. I mean, they have 1 rushing touchdown between the 2 of them, and it was Chandler. It was the first game that Cam Akers was out. He does have 3 catches in 2 of his last 4 games, so they have thrown the ball to him, whether he's been, a significant route runner, as you pointed out. Madison's run more routes, but there's still an opportunity there for, I think, Nick Mullins, who's more of a pocket passer that will lean on his running backs as opposed to Josh Dobbs, who will escape the pocket. So it's an evolving offense, new quarterback, Jeff Jefferson back, hopefully for the full game, and Chandler stepping in as the running back. So I think if you treat him as a flex, you're fine. If you need a number 2 running back, I think he's okay. I wouldn't necessarily say, oh my God, I have to start Ty Chandler, but you see where I have him ranked, 22. So a low end number 2 running back.
Yeah. Do you get a little nervous with that because he hasn't, I don't know. I think you're starting him because of the workload and the matchup, and those are important things. But how much work is he actually going to get? Is he going to share a little bit? I think I'm playing devil's advocate more than anything here, but I don't think you could have full confidence in him compared to other running backs that have, similar workloads, but we've seen them do it again and again.
Well, I'm starting him over James Conner facing the 49ers. I'm starting him over Najee Harris and the Steelers duo. I'm starting him over Javonte Williams. I like his matchup a little bit better. And so, again, you're talking about guys that are going to get 15-plus touches. Let's just be conservative here. The running back taking on the Bengals to me is a little bit more appealing in an offense that I think will be a little bit better than we've seen the last couple of weeks because different parts and what I would hope is better parts from mostly just Nick Mullins being a little safer and more productive than what Josh Dobbs has done. Plus you get Jefferson back. So there should be a little bit more opportunities to score for this team.
Okay. So how are we feeling about Justin Jefferson? Must start?
Yeah. Not the same type of expectation that we would have normally for Justin Jefferson, and certainly not the same type of expectation as last week. But At least a number 2 wide receiver. I've got him ranked pretty conservatively as a top 20 wide out, but not in the top 15.
It's just you want to make sure he's 100%. You want to make sure there's a connection with Nick Mullins. I'll say the same thing I said last week. If you have Justin Jefferson, it's very difficult to say I'm sitting him in any stretch, in any capacity. So you just gotta hope. Who knows what he would have finished? His stat line would have finished like last week if he had stayed healthy. Probably 6-7 catches, right? He was on that type of pace.
Yeah.
And 6-7 catches for him is typically a pretty big stat line. So you got to feel pretty good about that. He's trending in the right direction to play.
And for what it's worth, Nick Mullins is a good fit for the scheme that they have in Minnesota. It's a West Coast offense. He's been running that since he's been in the NFL. And his numbers aren't that bad when you look at backup quarterbacks. His completion rate, I think, in his career is in the 60s, like 64%. And I think he's capable of like throwing an accurate ball inside of 15 yards, and he will take some deep shots. I think it's actually a pretty decent fit for the Vikings offense based on what the Vikings offense was before Dobbs got under center.
That's what I said initially. If you recall, when Cousins first went down, I said, don't be surprised if Nick Mullins is starting because he's the guy that knows the system the best. And if they want to stay on, on pace, on rhythm, it was always, he was a better fit.
Yeah, that's what they want, right? They want the offense to run through Justin Jefferson, who, by the way, had 3 targets, played 18% of the snaps. All right, so if he had played basically the whole game, probably would have had 15 targets and 10 catches. All right, that's how it works. Jordan Addison, would you start Jordan Addison, Brandon Cooks, or Gabe Davis?
Addison.
I think Addison is where I'd go.
Okay. And KJ Osborne would be only in play if Jefferson. No, don't start him. TJ Hawkinson, you're going to start. But has anyone jumped him like Ferguson?
No.
I think just given this matchup, how bad the Bengals have been against tight ends, you got to love it. Now, Dobbs was just tight end centric, in Arizona and his first couple of games in Minnesota, whether it was the Hawkinson game or the Oliver game, the Josh Oliver game. With Jefferson back, you got to be a little concerned. But still, this team just bleeds fantasy points to tight end. So Hawkinson's the number 3 guy for me this week.
He's number 1 for me. I think he continues this trend of Cincinnati struggling against tight ends. I don't think the Bengals should or will come up with a solution to slowing him down when everybody else is on the field. And just so it's out there, Adam, Jefferson had a target on 37.5% of his routes last week.
That's pretty good.
It's good when that percentage, it's different from target share. That percentage is good when it's 25%. This was 37.5%. I think I know where the Vikings are going to want to go with the football. I think Nick Mullins can get it to him. I might have Jefferson ranked too low.
And Jamie, would you start TJ Hawkinson, Chigo Okonkwo, or Kylan Granson? Oh,
you did. You won the bet.
Yeah.
I should have said Colts tight ends versus Chigo Okonkwo.
You should have, absolutely. All right, Jake Brown.
Did that help you win, by the way?
I don't remember. Actually, I think I ended up dropping him for Gerald Everett or something like that.
Okay, that worked out better.
Jake Browning is outside the top 15 for you guys, or at least he was when I did this initially. Of course, I don't remember, where my house is these days, but yeah, no, he's outside the top 15 for you guys. So he's playing great, 27 or more points in 2 straight games, but this is a much more difficult matchup. Minnesota's just a good defense right now. I mean, it's just that simple. So Browning or Flacco?
Flacco for me.
Flacco, but it's close.
Browning or what's his name? Kyler.
Agreed.
People are really. Adam looks like Jay. I don't know how to pronounce that guy's name. In Knocked Up when he gets pink eye. Yeah, I do look like that guy, but that guy's even skinnier than I am, though. So which is hard. Browning, I have a question here. Browning or Geno Smith if Geno plays?
Geno.
Browning or Tua?
Tua.
I have Tua higher. Look, Browning has played really well, but he's just not taking many chances with the football. And so you almost have to count on more of these catch and run type plays. He's played for 3 games now. Do you know how many times he's thrown into the end zone in those 3 games?
Browning, I'm going to say 3.
1. One pass in the end zone. Do you know how many times he's thrown a ball?
I'm going to disagree with that.
I'm going to disagree with that too. He had a offensive pass interference call on T. Higgins. That was one. I saw one to Jamar Chase. That was
Those must have been
That
the
was
two.
the one to chase, but those are ones that aren't going to count. So yes, he has thrown some that were penalized, but it's not a lot. And he's also only thrown, and again, this is not counting penalized plays, 9 throws of 15 or more air yards over 87 pass attempts.
Adam looks like a malnourished carrot. I have an orange shirt on. That's really good. I like that. I should probably eat more carrots. All right, Joe Mixon. Let me give you some Joe Mixons here. Joe Mixon, or let's say Jalen Waddle against the Jets.
I'll take Mixon.
Joe Mixon or Derrick Henry.
Henry.
This really could be a letdown spot for Mixon. I mean, the Vikings run defense is good. You're not benching Mixon, but this could be a letdown spot for him.
So good. But let me tell you this. They have, in the last 3 games with Jake Browning, the 7th highest run rate in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, they had the 7th lowest run rate.
Yeah, they had Joe Burrow.
I didn't include the Baltimore game, which was half Burrow, half Browning. But with Burrow, 7th lowest run rate. With Browning, 7th highest run rate. That's what they want to do. And it helped. I mean, Mixon's not running the ball any better. He's been below 4 yards per carry. He's just getting so much work. He's got a quarterback that dumps it off a lot. So that's
also Chase Brown's work in there too. Don't forget that.
Yeah, absolutely. But it is a lot of work for both of them. Mixon has 19 carries and 21 carries in his last 2 games.
By the way, half Burrow, half Browning ended up 23 fantasy points that day.
Yeah. His upside cannot be understated here. The fact that he's capable of getting 20 PPR. I don't know if he ends up with 20 PPR given the matchup, but he's in such a good spot right now given the quarterback.
Yeah. Okay. Jamar Chase is, let's see, 18th. Let's see the updated rankings on this. I had it as 18th for both of you guys for Jamar Chase.
He's higher for me.
15th now for Jamie, 18th for Dave, and 8th for Heath. Again, it's, they're just a good defense. And Chase has been kind of bad in 2 of 3 games with Browning.
It's a good defense that's going to blitz him a lot. That's what the Vikings tend to do. And it's a lot of short passes. Now, Chase did hit on one big catch 2 games ago. It was an awesome play. And he's capable of that. I don't want to rush to put Chase as a top 10 must start type of fantasy receiver.
You want to see the Vikings playing with a lead here for Jamar Chase.
Which
absolutely.
could absolutely.
And I'm not going to ask you for a pick because I'm just going to forget it. But T. Higgins, let's put T. Higgins with Brandon Cooks, Jordan Addison, Gabe Davis. Where's Higgins?
Addison, Cooks, Higgins for me.
I've got Higgins at the top of the list. Very close between him and Addison.
And I'll just throw a little love Tanner Hudson's way. He's got 7.5 to 10.1 PPR fantasy points in 5 of his last 6 games. I think you can do better, but I just wanted to mention Tanner Hudson's name. And do you like the Vikings DST?
Not horrible, but there's so many other options out there.
All right, let's go to Kansas City at New England. Stat of the game. The Chiefs have allowed 13 or more. Dave already mentioned this. He actually mentioned in non-PPR. But in PPR, the Chiefs have allowed 13.5 or more PPR fantasy points to a running back in 6 of their last 7 games. So that's one of the reasons we like Zeke. But the question I had earlier is, like, what is a reason to start Patrick Mahomes other than he's Patrick Mahomes? Which is a fine reason. But can you tell me some other reason to start Mahomes?
No. I mean, it's crazy. It really is. Like, Stafford's easy for me. Purdy's easy for me. I'm starting Justin Fields over him this week. That's really it. You can certainly make a case for Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence. Lawrence's last 4 games, he's been fantastic. And Jordan Love, great matchup. And prior to last week, he's been fantastic, especially if Christian Watson plays. But I mean, when you look at what Mahomes is capable of, and even in a tough matchup, even on the road, they're still 9.5 point favorites, which is a little crazy, but still, he's got the potential to go off anytime, and look, Belichick, I'm sure, is going to have a great game plan to try and take Travis Kelce away. And then it's a matter of can Rice and maybe somebody else step up. I think the hope would be, get a little bit more creative with McKinnon in the passing game, because that certainly helped him last year. Find somebody else to step up and make a play. MVS, Guy Moore, Richie James, somebody step up and make a play.
Good luck with that.
I know. Right. That's the problem.
That's been a huge problem. How about this? In his last 6 games, he has 1 with more than 21 fantasy points, none with 25 plus. So I feel like that upside is it's the missing piece here. I think he's safe for, put him in that 20 to 23 point range. But I have a tough time expecting him to get to 30 fantasy points against this defense. Now, that being said, Trubisky had 22 last week against the Patriots in a game where he had to throw a lot. And I think that Mahomes will have to throw a lot here. So I've got some confidence in Mahomes. I just don't have enough to say that he's got that huge upside. I feel like that's been missing. It has been missing for the last half of the season.
Would you start Kyler Murray or Patrick Mahomes?
That's Mahomes.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone's asking Mahomes or Purdy?
Purdy.
Brock Purdy.
Yeah. Okay. Running backs. So Pacheco. So, okay. I said the Cowboys were running back slayers. How about the Patriots? Their last 4 games, Jonathan Taylor did score 14.5 points, but he had 23 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown. Barkley scored 6.2 points. Eckler scored 4.7. And the Steelers running backs combined for 15.8 points. Neither of them was any good. So do you like a running back? I mean, obviously the if scenario with Pacheco, but Dave, do you like a Chiefs running back in this game?
I like McKinnon as a PPR sleeper. That's about as good as it gets. They're still going to take work away from each other, McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think we know how the split's going to work, but it's going to be close to 50-50 in terms of overall snaps and the valuable touches, the one that leads to fantasy points, the passing downs work inside the 5. That leans toward McKinnon over Edwards-Helaire.
What if Pacheco plays? Where would you rank Pacheco?
Assuming he gets a couple of practices in and all that.
Yeah,
probably like top 12, top 15, somewhere in that range.
Oh boy, it's just such a tough matchup, and he'd be playing kind of hurt, maybe.
Right, that's why he's not top 5. Like
I think shoulder injury is a little bit more
Yeah.
able to stomach from an injury standpoint. Although stomach injury would be tough, but to stomach, then he's trying to play through a lower leg injury.
We got a question in the chat before I forget. Chiefs DST or Raiders DST?
So I would rather roster the the Chiefs DST. I think they're close. The Chiefs next week get the Raiders at home. So I'd rather just have them for 2 weeks.
Yeah. All righty. And we'll go to Rashee Rice, or I think it's like the 3rd time I'm asking you this week. Rashee Rice or Jamar Chase?
Chase.
I have Rice 1 spot ahead of Chase.
Okay. Rashee Rice or Devontae?
Rice.
I've got Devontae Adams or Devontae Smith.
It's Adams. I'm sorry, Adams.
Rice over Adams. Devontae Smith over Rashee Rice.
Yeah, obviously you couldn't tell the way I was spelling it by the way I said it, Dave. Come on.
Sorry.
All right, Rashee Rice is a top 20 guy, and he's on fire. Has a target share of at least 25% in 3 straight games. I'll just move on here. Start Travis Kelce. Sit Bailey Zappi. I think we've spoken enough about Ezekiel Elliott. He's a top 15 running back. Heath has him 4th. Rashee Rice or Zeke?
Zeke.
I believe I have Rice higher than Zeke in full PPR.
It will be interesting to see what happens to his catches if Douglas and Parker play.
Sure.
Mostly Douglas.
I mean, I went back. I looked at the targets every game for Zeke and Stevenson combined, and they've had 6 to 8 targets in 8 of the last 10 games. So it's just a big part of their offense.
Well, prior to last week, so just taking what Stevenson had done, he was top 10 in targets for running backs on the season.
Yeah.
And then you look at what they've done as just receptions, they're top 5 in terms of receptions at the position. So it's been a staple of their offense, whoever's been at wide receiver for them and really whoever's been at quarterback for them. The question is he going to get 3 to 4 catches or is he going to get 5 to 7 catches? And so that's the concern. If he doesn't get the 5 to 7 catches, he couldn't run the ball last week at all. He had the one run at the end of the game when the game was, trying to put the game away. He just was not running the ball well. The reason, and I said this last week, the reason you're starting Ezekiel Elliott is not because of what he's going to do as a rusher. You're starting him because of the role in the passing game. And so that was the constant last week. We saw it. He scored a touchdown. It was fantastic. I'm a little concerned that if he's 3 to 4 catches, we're looking at maybe no touchdowns, which I hope he does, but maybe no touchdowns. And if he doesn't score and you're getting, let's say 3 for 25, 3 for 30, 4 for 30 and 68 yards rushing, it's an okay day. It's not a great day though. It's not top 4.
No. All right. If Demario Douglas plays, would you start him or Jordan Addison? That whole group.
Douglas and PPR.
I'd take the shot on Addison. More upside.
All right. And if Douglas doesn't play, and Park. I don't know. I'm wasting time here. Hunter
No,
Henry.
Juju's in that conversation of the guys you mentioned before of T. Higgins and Brandon Cooks and those guys. I mean, look, he had 4 for 90. It was a good connection with Bailey Zappi. It was a game they're playing with the lead, so who knows if they're chasing points?
Yeah,
like you expect, he might have a 6-catch day.
And it's his second straight revenge game.
That's right.
Okay, we're gonna take a break. The Jets are at the Dolphins when we come back on Fantasy Football Today.
We need your sports news anywhere.
We've got breaking news to bring you.
Then get your sports anytime you want them. Big trade news overnight to discuss.
Because we know you need sports all the time.
A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
A legend adds to their legacy.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
CBS Sports HQ, anywhere, anytime, all the time.
We welcome you back. Jets are at the Dolphins. By the way, the Chiefs DST is a good play. They're top 7 for everybody. I left that one out, but slumping a bit, but hopefully gets back on track. Jets at Dolphins. I'll start with a DST. Would you start the Chiefs DST, the Jets DST, or the Dolphins DST this week?
Dolphins.
Okay.
Dolphins, Jets, Chiefs is how I have it now, based on the Dolphins' injuries.
I don't want to
go Dolphins, Chiefs, Jets.
Sorry.
Yeah, if the Dolphins heal up, then the Jets will be easy to put behind Kansas City.
I don't want to shortchange this game, but we've spent a lot of time yesterday talking about Tua, today talking about Tua, Jalen Waddle, all that. So if Tyreek Hill plays, which he expects to do, you're starting Tyreek Hill. Waddle is a borderline 2-3 receiver. And Tua, we're trying to get away from. Just give me 4 guys. Dave, you already went through the list, but 4 guys you'd start over Tua.
Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. No, I'll give you some names. Stafford, Trevor Lawrence, Russell Wilson, Jared Goff.
And you said Flacco too, right?
Flacco as of now.
Okay. Jamie?
No Flacco for me.
But the other guys, Lawrence, Stafford, obviously.
Yeah, Bears defense is really good too, so I don't want to shortchange their opponent.
No doubt.
All right. So Mostert, Achane, Breece Hall. How are we ranking them this week?
Mostert, Hall, Achane.
That's how I have it.
Do you have full confidence in Breece Hall? I was thinking about this. After last week's game, Breece Hall had a huge game, 26.6 points, 8 catches, 86 yards, and a touchdown against Houston. And he said, believe it or not, we should stop asking questions about Breece Hall. And I said, yeah, of course, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to just completely excuse how disappointing he's been, especially in any format other than full PPR. He's still 40 or fewer rushing yards in 6 of his last 7 games, 7 straight games without a rushing touchdown. And the Dolphins, by the way, have been really good against the run lately. So is he just in that automatic start category, Breece Hall?
Yeah. Especially the last 2 games with the role in the passing game.
Well, that's been very consistent, but what's the difference between him and Zeke? You got guys who are on crappy offenses, unlikely to score a touchdown, but all they do is catch passes, basically.
Yeah,
and you could probably argue that the Dolphins' defense is better against the run than the Chiefs' defense.
Oh, it's not even a question. So who do you like better, Breece or Zeke?
I have Breece ranked higher. This is in full PPR. It's because of the receptions. I actually thought Zach Wilson played well last week. And I think there's that connection there between Wilson and Hall. We've seen it a lot of times this year where he's finding Hall through the air and Hall's making good plays as a pass catcher. And the Dolphins have allowed their fair share of touchdowns to running backs too.
If I was having this conversation with Heath, I would use Heath's argument against him on Hall in that comparing Hall and Zeke. Hall can change the game on one play. Zeke cannot.
Yeah, it's just we haven't really seen that from Breece
No,
Hall.
I know. But again, you're talking about okay, who's going to get to 5 catches? I'd say they both have the opportunity to do that, right? We've seen it,
Yeah, but I'd lean Hall there over Zeke.
And I would too, but I'm saying we've seen it now for 1 game sample size with Zeke, but basically the position for the Patriots, and we've seen it now for Hall for a few weeks now where he's been doing that. In terms of matchup, I think they're somewhat similar. You lean a little bit more toward Hall's potential because I think just of career at this point, where they are in their careers, and again. Hall's still a difference maker to me. I know we haven't seen it very often, Adam. That's fair, but I still take my chances with Hall over Zeke.
Okay, Hall or Oates?
Oh, they don't like each other anymore, so
they don't. Oh, that's so sad.
I think one sued the other one.
Oh man. I guess he wasn't making his dreams come true. Garrett Wilson or Jamar Chase?
Wilson.
Chase in non-PPR, Wilson in full and half.
There it is.
Yeah, Wilson never scores, but very reliable with Zach Wilson. It's double-digit targets. It's 7 or more catches, basically. It's 80 or more yards. It's happening almost every time with Garrett Wilson. The Buffalo game was a total flop, but very reliable with Garrett Wilson.
But he also scored against them.
He scored. That was such a stupid game. The Tim Boyle game, and yeah. All right, Conklin. Yeah, Conklin's another guy. You could get 8-9 fantasy points out of him. But he hasn't scored a touchdown this year, and that's pretty much it. I guess let me Dave, what are your expectations for Achane?
Well, if he plays, I think he can still get around 12 touches, and you're hoping he breaks a long one against the Jets. But we saw last week what happened when it's the opportunities, but doesn't come through. It's kind of a sucky game, and you're upset that you start him, especially when Mostert's able. It's clear that Mostert's the guy that they trust the most. And because of that limits the upside of Achane. You're starting him for the upside. You start him as a number 2 RB.
I got some questions here. Mostert or Bijan?
Oh, I like them both. I've got Mostert 1 spot ahead of Bijan.
Bijan's my number 2 running back this week. He's going to go absolutely crazy against the Panthers.
You hope so.
I hope so.
Zach Wilson or Nick Mullins?
Mullins.
I think I have Mullins behind Wilson for now.
Tua or Jordan Love?
Love.
These are all from the chat, by the way. Conklin or Otten?
Conklin.
Okay. And just one more name. If Achane is not practicing and you need a running back, Jeff Wilson. We already saw against the Jets. He had a nice role and played all right. So, all right. That's it for this game. Chicago's at Cleveland. 2 stats of the game here about the Bears defense. Number 1, they had 10 sacks in their first 9 games. 5 of those 10 sacks were against Washington. Is that amazing? I mean, horrible pass rush. They have 11 sacks in their last 4 games. And Montez Sweat has played 5 games. So they have 11 sacks in 5 games with Sweat. 16th in pressure rate with Sweat. They were 31st before the Sweat trade. Stat of the game number 2. Chicago has held Rashee Rice, Cortland Sutton, Terry McLaurin, Jordan Addison twice, Devontae Adams, and Amon-Ra St. Brown to fewer than 13 PPR fantasy points. All those guys plus Keenan Allen, Chris Olave, and Jacoby Myers, I think, fewer than 70 yards. Tough matchup for wide receivers. I know you don't love Jalen Waddle, so we'll put him on the Waddle scale. How do you feel about Amari Cooper?
I'd start Cooper over Waddle. I like that there's high target potential for Cooper with Flacco throwing the ball. And Flacco he's going to continue to throw deep, and that just gives him more opportunities to make splash plays and chunk yardage for his wide receivers, and Cooper's the one who should benefit. I've got Cooper as a low-end wide receiver too.
Fair enough. For Cleveland, so Flacco, is where in the rankings is Flacco?
Mid
QB2. It's not an easy matchup.
Behind Tua, behind Goff, behind Kyler, but right there.
I feel like this game has a lot of okay starts. Flacco, Cooper, probably Jerome Ford will get his 12 PPR fantasy points roughly. Is there a great start? You believe in DJ Moore and Justin Fields? They great starts?
I'm not sitting them.
Yes, they are great.
Look, there's some downside here for DJ Moore, but not enough to say I'm sitting him. I mean, still top 10 receiver.
Yeah, he's been number 7, I think, for the season. So you just cannot sit DJ Moore. Justin Jefferson or DJ Moore?
More
right now, yeah.
How do you feel about Deontay Foreman? I see he's outside the top 24. Cleveland's allowed 6 rushing touchdowns to running backs in their last 5 games. Dave, Deontay Foreman.
I kind of like Deontay Foreman. I don't have him ranked as a top 24 running back yet, but I think he's the lead running back. I think he's the preferred running back for Chicago. If there's a guy who's going to score, I think it's him. And the Browns defense, we've already talked about losing Grant Delpit. He was their leading tackler at safety. Yeah. And we talked about the depth on the defensive line. It's all going to get tested. Chicago's going to try and work that. And I think Foreman's going to be the one that sees the most touches. He's got a shot at 15 touches. And he had a couple of catches last week, ran more routes than any other Bears running back last week. He's a low-end RB2, high-end RB3.
If he doesn't score, you're getting another empty stat line, though.
Well, what did he have last week? It was like
9
60
PPR
total yards and a couple of catches.
Yeah, he had 9.2 PPR fantasy points.
I think that's pretty close to his floor. So that's why he's not like a slam dunk top 20 type of running back.
See, I would say that's his ceiling without a touchdown.
Well, his ceiling without a touchdown is not exactly a ceiling, right? I mean, you're hoping for a touchdown.
I don't think he's getting 70 total yards and 2 catches against this defense.
I think he could, but that's not why you're starting him. You're starting Deontay Foreman because you don't have anybody else at running back, and maybe you find him off the waiver wire. Like Ty Chandler is an easy start ahead of Deontay Foreman.
All right.
I'd start Chuba ahead of him. As of now, I'd start Antonio Gibson ahead of him. Like it's not like he's a. How about this? I'd start him over Najee.
I wouldn't.
I think he can be better than I think they're in the exact same boat.
I'm going to sum up.
I would agree with, but I think Najee's got a higher ceiling against Colts.
All right, yeah, I'll sum up Najee in a little bit. The Browns' run defense really hasn't been great. 4.3 yards per carry allowed to running backs. Nothing special there. Cole Kmet's about 10th in the rankings, 9th or 10th. Evan Ingram over Cole Kmet?
Easy.
Definitely.
Kmet over Likely?
Yes.
I've got Kmet and PPR over Likely. Non-PPR, I don't think I can do that, though.
That's interesting. I don't think I have the Baltimore-Jacksonville game in this show. In fact, I definitely don't.
We'll get to it.
We talked about it 3 minutes ago. What are you talking about?
That might have happened. Njoku or Kmet?
Njoku.
David Njoku.
Njoku or Ferguson?
Njoku.
Ferguson.
Njoku or Kincaid?
Njoku.
Kincaid.
Bears actually allow the 5th most fantasy points to tight ends. It's a little deceiving, though. They give up touchdowns, not a ton of yards. What am I missing here? I think we got to do a little more Justin Fields. I know you like him over Tua. I know you like Stafford over Fields. Would you go Justin Fields or Patrick Mahomes?
I'll say it again. Yes, I would.
When did you say that? This game or the Chiefs game?
The Chiefs game.
Okay, I repeat during each game because I know people skip. You start Fields over Mahomes. Dave, how about you?
Same.
Fields or Russell Wilson at Detroit?
Justin Fields.
All right. All right, I'm going to finish up on this game here. Which DST do you like better, Cleveland or Chicago?
Cleveland.
Chicago.
Houston's at Tennessee. Stat of the game in the last 5. Oh, no, I already did that one. Derrick Henry with all the history. Maybe the stat of the game is that the Titans are a 2.5-point favorite. And we know how game script dependent Derrick Henry is. It's so stark how good he is when they are either competitive or win. And when they get blown out, he sucks. But, is Derrick Henry a top 12 running back against, I believe the Texans allow the fewest yards per carry to running backs in the NFL.
It's really low. It's like 3.3 yards per carry. And I have no problem starting Derrick Henry this week, as long as the Texans offense is like down to backups. Davis Mills starting, no Nico Collins, hard for them to move the ball. They're probably going to punt a lot. It sets up the perfect game script for Derrick Henry to eventually break through against the Texans.
Do you have any faith in any Texans? Because I feel like Collins is not going to play. Stroud, right, I would think, has a better chance. But I don't want, even against Tennessee, I don't really want to start C.J. Stroud without Tank Dell or Nico Collins. Offensive line's a little beat up. Laramie Tunsil didn't practice for what that's worth. Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any faith in any Texans here?
No.
Not really, no.
I mean, can't trust Singletary. Too tough. And the Titans' run defense, I know they gave up yards last week to the Dolphins, but it still feels like this is a matchup that they can still have some success, even if Jeffrey Simmons doesn't play. So, no faith. And like you said, even if Collins does play, how healthy is he?
And what about Schultz? I mean, the Titans give up the second fewest fantasy points to tight ends. Haven't given up a touchdown to tight ends.
Yeah, no, it's not a starter by any stretch.
Okay. I think you should stash Dalton Schultz, though. You never know. I mean, he's got a great opportunity for targets.
If you can get him, sure.
Will Levis, I know encouraging game, but still going to sit Will Levis. Henry, we just talked about. Hopkins is good or great, Jamie, this week?
Very good.
Where do you have him? I've got him as a top 20-ish receiver.
Okay. Let's see if I have any questions here in the chat. And Chigo Conquo has basically become Tyler Conklin. 45 to 62 yards in 3 straight games, 8.5 to 9.6 PPR fantasy points for Chig in 3 straight games. Just looking for, Tyjae Spears. I haven't talked about him. Spears, Gus Edwards, or Jordan Addison in PPR?
I'd say Addison, because I'm not sure how much work Spears is going to get. This doesn't feel like a game script game that's good for Spears.
I'll go Spears. You've seen now the upside the last 2 weeks. One was with injury to Derrick Henry. One was in a game that they did need him. But how do you go away from using him at this point? He's just been fantastic.
Oh, they're going to use him. He's their third down guy. But it's just a matter of how often he'll be able to have.
Oh, no, I agree. Look, there's a reason why you're asking that question about those 3 guys, because they're all in questionable situations. I mean, Addison at best is the third target for a third string quarterback. And Gus has been completely not phased out, but feels like he's getting phased out for Keaton Mitchell. Yeah. So I'd rather take the guy who's been productive and has a chance to be explosive like Spears does.
Would you be surprised if none of these 3 had 11 PPR points or more?
Yes, because they've done it more times than not lately.
Okay.
And we have a question in the chat. Derrick Henry or Tony Pollard?
PPR, I'll take Pollard.
I'll take Henry.
Oh, man. All right, so I definitely forgot a game, but that's okay. We'll do Baltimore-Jacksonville tomorrow, and we'll finish with Pittsburgh at Indianapolis. And here is the summary of Najee Harris. He has scored a touchdown in 4 games. He has scored more than 15 fantasy points in all 4 of those games. He has not scored more than 11.3 fantasy points in any game without a touchdown. And in 6 of 9 games without a touchdown, he's actually scored fewer than 8 PPR fantasy points, 6 out of those 9 games. So when you talk about the phrase touchdown dependent, it is Najee Harris for sure. He does have a good matchup though. But does anybody want to start anyone other than Michael Pittman in this game?
Well, Zach Moss.
Sure.
Right, but you've already said, I do remember some things. You're not thrilled about starting Zach Moss. I don't know. Do you want? It's funny. It's like I want to go back to him. Tough matchup. Steelers' run defense is usually really good, but this is a guy who plays almost every snap. You just don't find that. I think he had a touchdown call back last week.
He did. Holding penalty.
I'd like for them to run the ball a little bit more. They've been very pass heavy. But of a guy like ranked like in the 20s, I actually do want to start Zach Moss. I don't know if that makes sense because I do see more upside him than like a Jerome Ford or something like that.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you've seen it, so you've seen 30-point games from him. You've seen multiple 20-point games from him. So yes, I think you're starting him, and it's just a matter of, does he turn all those opportunities into something productive? And yes, maybe it's just a touchdown that changes the opinion of it, or the perception of it, or just the overall stat line. But it's not anything that's, you say, okay, this is a constant. Like, he's gotten catches, but not a lot of yards with it. He's gotten a lot of carries, but done nothing with it the last 2 games. And so, look, Pittsburgh's run defense, again, just on a run defense perspective, last week was great, but they couldn't stop Zeke in the passing game. And the week before, they couldn't do anything to stop James Conner. And that's exactly what Mike Tomlin said going into the game. We can't let James Conner do James Conner things, I think is what his quote was, because he's familiar with him. And that's exactly what he did. So their run defense is struggling, or their defense on running backs is struggling. And as we said earlier, Moss has the ability to do both of those things. So if he's not getting work and he's not producing on the ground, they could throw to him, but it just hasn't been a lot of stuff with it. So I think you're just starting him as a number 2 running back, as opposed to what the perception has been, where he should have been a top 10 guy based on all these opportunities.
He's a high volume running back in a matchup where game script shouldn't hurt him. Definitely has a chance to score. Hopefully it sticks this week instead of last week. I think that's the epitome of an RB2, middle to low end RB2. I
believe both of those last 2 games were on the road, so maybe come back home, change some things too.
I would like for them to get Braden Smith back, but I don't think that's going to happen. Or one of their linemen, he did not practice on Wednesday. All right, Pittman, we'll see how he does in a somewhat tougher matchup, but he's been more or less matchup proof. And Deontay Johnson. Would you start Deontay Johnson or Najee Harris or Jalen Warren? Who's the best Steeler to start?
Deontay.
I'd go Deontay. I like the connection with Trubisky. I would count on that.
Don't be surprised if Trubisky gets benched in this game.
That's fair.
Yeah. The connection's been a little bit overrated because each of the last 2 games, he had a garbage time touchdown, and then he had a garbage time, like, long catch, I think, on the last play of the game. But he does have a touchdown in 2 straight games with Trubisky.
I mean, that's all he does is score touchdowns. So we always say.
Yeah, right. Exactly. You know Deontay Johnson. Deontay or Jalen Waddle?
Waddle.
Deontay or Tyler Lockett?
I'll take Lockett.
And which DST do you like better?
Steelers. No, Colts. Sorry, Colts.
I have the Colts higher.
Okay. Yeah, the Steelers have been terrible the last 2 weeks, but hopefully they can bounce back. This was going to be the game of the week, but I think I went with Bills Cowboys. Actually, Ravens Jaguars was also in contention, but I forgot that one. We'll save it for tomorrow. It's obviously
You can hit the music on it tomorrow.
We had a great discussion. Trevor Lawrence versus Lamar Jackson.
Well, I'm sorry that I forgot it. I'm glad that the other guys did not forget it. And I'm sorry about my 3 months of illness. It's a sinus infection, in case anybody's curious. So
just take care of yourself, buddy. We need
yeah.
So it's a Heath infection.
I don't get it.
Sinus infection.
Oh,
Ah.
that was pretty good. Do I have a good Heath side to take us out? How about? Oh, yeah, that's it for the show, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Well, actually, join us tonight for our live stream at 7:30, youtube.com/fantasyfootball today. And we'll talk to you tomorrow with starter sit for the NFC home games.